Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Craig, and we are your hosts on this journey.
This podcast is created in partnership with Pennsylvania ASCD. All right, welcome back, friends of SEL in EDU. I'm here with Craig and our very special guest, Steven Lin, one of the best principals I have ever had a chance to meet. And especially, he is from my home state of Pennsylvania. So we are thrilled to have him here with us. Steven was appointed principal of John Beck Elementary School in July of 2022. Now, I have known Steven, though, for several years from other work that he's done in other districts. So I'm really excited that we were able to snag some time with him in this new position and not only talk about SEL, but to also talk about what that means in terms of leadership today. So he is bringing with him 7 years of prior experience in the role of school principal, 4 of which were spent in the next door district at Fort Zellner Elementary School in Eastern Lebanon County School District. Mr. Lin began his career in 2005 as a school teacher in Chesapeake, Virginia, which I also love hearing about the differences in culture and how that has influenced and shaped who he is. In 2013, he began his journey into school administration, serving as an assistant principal and principal in Roanoke City Public Schools and Floyd County Public Schools. Mr. Lin's educational background includes a BS in elementary education from Penn State University, one of my alma maters, and he also holds an MA in Ed Leadership and Administration from the George Washington University. He is a National and PA Associations of Elementary School Principals member, and he is also a member of the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, also known as ASCD, and is serving on the board for ASCD's affiliate in Pennsylvania in the Southern Region chapter. Mr. Lin lives in Lidditz with his beautiful wife and 3 amazing children, 2 sons and a daughter. He enjoys time with his family, exploring the local regions, playing tennis, cooking, which he and Craig have in common, and picking on his banjo. And maybe, he doesn't have his banjo with him today because he's working from school. This is what happens when you ask, oh my gosh, you have the banjo. Okay, friends, we are hearing music as part of this podcast. It's getting better and better. He is grateful for the invitation to join the Beck and Warwick families and looks forward to continuing its tradition of excellence, student wellness, and local pride. And I bring that up in particular because I think when I think of excellence among students and staff, student wellness, and just pride in who we are and how we show up and how we embrace our students for who they are, I think of you and Steven. So I am so glad to have you on our podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. I feel like very, very humbled to be in you guys' cyber presence, I should say. Yeah.
Soon to be in person because this episode is going to drop before the PASCD conference.
Yay.
Yes. And of which our esteemed colleague Craig will be keynoting. Just putting that out there into the world because we'll get this out here and we'll get a chance to be in person, all of us, to, as Craig likes to say, break bread together.
Fellowship. I like that.
Yes.
Well, one of the reasons our podcast is called SEL in EDU because we ground everything we do in social emotional learning. And Steven, I met you before COVID when you were working as a principal and your district was looking into what was SEL and the 5 competencies. And I just remember you and I kind of just really clicked and hit it off. And one of the things that I was so enamored with is that you integrated mindfulness into everyday practice for your young people at your school. And I'd love to hear maybe a little bit about that or your mindfulness journey and how you saw that connection and the benefit for school children.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, my journey with mindfulness starts with not knowing anything about mindfulness. And then, I think we all have had times in our own personal journeys where you have milestones and crossroads, and sometimes those milestones and crossroads are traumatic, right? Whether it's professional trauma, personal trauma, and for me, I got to a point in my career where I wasn't sure where I was headed, right? I actually was thinking about opening up Lin's Dumplings food truck.
Yes.
Thought about leaving, altogether. In one of my prior districts in Virginia, I honestly took a shot at me and kind of saw a lost puppy. And it was a school district that was steeped in this thing called mindfulness or breathing or presence, right? And I think one of the pieces that I learned very early was take care of yourself, because the people around you will become reflections of who you are. And that was really insightful, right? I think that oftentimes early in many of our careers, we think in education we are doing things to others. We may even say we're doing things with, but it's in this service sort of mentality. I'm not saying we get away from service, but I think we get to this idea of, maybe service to others is service to yourself, right? Maybe it starts there. The fact I'm still in education, I think, says a lot. And it was a brief moment, a brief blip there in Floyd County. I definitely have to give them a shout out, because that time there was immense, and it convinced me that I should give this another shot, another go, a new parameter. And of course, I came from the mountaintop, right? It was in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So it is kind of comedic a little. I went up the mountain and found myself. And then I came down the mountain into southeastern Pennsylvania, and I love the community. That's the thing about jumping around. You get to meet communities, and as Craig likes to say, break bread, have fellowship, get to know people. But when I came down the mountain, I was changed. I think one of the things that I really wanted to integrate was this idea that first with our teachers, with our kids too, this idea of creating the reflection that we want to be proud of, and that we can be at one with and connect. So I dove right into it at that school with the first faculty meeting that resulted in a lot of awkward laughter, because we started with sitting and just doing a body scan, from our toes all the way up to our head, breathing in through our nose, filling our belly full of air. And then, noticing that each fleeting moment is a blessing, right? So that was key. And there were some awkward laughter. And I thought, maybe as a new principal, I was going to be laughed out the school. But I'm grateful to a staff there that said, let's see where this guy's going to go. So eventually this kind of led into morning announcements, where we started with breathing, just breathing, simple breathing in, just the act of experiencing the in-breath, noticing when the breath pauses before you begin your out-breath, letting it out through your mouth, experiencing the fullness of that. And honestly, I think it's made a difference. I think kids still use common language at that school still, even now that I'm gone. And that's meant a lot to me, because I feel like it means a lot to the children and their families too. So, yeah.
So I'm wondering, what did that look like for were there any staff who were a little resistant? And I'm thinking about that as a secondary teacher, because I know personally, during COVID, I'm like, I can't meditate. I can't be mindful. I can't stop my brain. And I was a big person to poo-poo that. And I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. And I didn't realize the power that when you engaged in that type of a practice and it became comfortable for you, that it could truly be transformative.
I think that you're so right. And I think you have to honor that sentiment that people have, right? Too often in education, we have mandates. We come in and, people fear that new administrators are going to come shake things up without knowing the story of the school and things like that. Getting to know people, getting to that fellowship first. But then if you look into mindfulness, it's an invitation. I think one of the things I was really fiercely particular about was that mindfulness was never going to be something that was mandatory. Yes, in the morning announcements, you will have a daily invitation. Children can participate. They don't have to. Teachers are encouraged to participate. They don't have to. All I ask is that they honor that time and that space. And for those who want to participate, they can. And, in some ways, to use more of a pop culture concept, you're trying to create something and let it go viral. And you hope that it does, right? Because if it doesn't, then maybe that wasn't the right approach. But I think deep down inside, all of us are looking for. I keep going back to this word presence. To me, mindfulness is that word gets used so much. I'm beginning to shift to this idea of being present. And that's really what mindfulness is: experiencing the breath. The moment is the moment. Be where your feet are, as one of my colleagues likes to say, right? And I think people will hop on if it's an invitation, when it's the right time for them. And invariably, teachers will find that right time more often than not, because it is a stressful world, and COVID just amplified it. And then the ensuing world that we've emerged out of, whether it's the dialogue or lack of dialogue at school board meetings or in the news, that puts our schools under the microscope. I think there's a longingness to, just atone and be at one with yourself and kind of collect yourself. So it's how you package it. Sometimes I don't want to make this a marketing thing, but it's an invitation at the end. It's an invitation. The way I've always presented it. Yeah. A lot, it's funny. I don't know if you guys have experienced this in schools often, oftentimes when you're like, I need help, I need someone to step up and help me out. Like, how often people just jump in, right? And yet, if you were to present the same message and be like, this is what we must do, and you'll be evaluated on it or whatnot, how often people they may do it, but in a begrudging way. So I'm glad we started, I was fiercely tied to this idea of invitations. Yeah.
Well, I want to first wish you a happy Principals Month, because it's October, and so you are celebrating, or we should be celebrating you and other principals who are standing in front of young people across the entire globe. So it's pretty amazing to have you in community today. So I wanted to first start there.
Thank you.
I was a principal of a K-5 community in South Boston. We partnered with an organization called Ivy Child International. Rose Pavlov is the founder. She is a dear heart, dear friend. And I remember her introducing mindfulness, into our community. And folks was like, oh, Mr. Martin, what is this business? What are you doing? Why we gotta breathe? Why are we breathing? I don't understand. And it's like, if you breathe, you can gain even more life. Like, do you realize you elongate your life if you breathe? Like, just let that thing go. Why are you fighting? Mr. Martin up here trying to do something new. I don't understand. And it was a slow brew. It was a slow brew. We had some early adopters.
Mm-hmm.
Who maybe had practiced yoga, maybe tried meditation to some degree. And there were some folks who were like, yep, I'm going to show my kids how to do it, because they had direct impact. And so when you talk about going viral, I understood it. I know in our school community, it took young people who were absolutely charismatic or precocious to drive that. And so people had a hard time saying no to an 8-year-old who puts on that smile may not have teeth fully in their mouth, but that smile lights up the world, right? And you're like, you know what? If they can do it, can I too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as we think about, I know as it took us years. It took us a couple of years to really gain real traction. There was a lot of folks who it's not part of their tradition. It's not part of an experience that they've had, and it may have felt, a little different, for them. I'm curious, how did you begin to win over teachers who may have been resistant?
Yeah. So, first of all, I was connecting with so much about your story there because, you go into it and you just don't know, right? I think sometimes when you're a new principal, especially if you're new to the community, you don't know there's, again, go back to this concept of stories, right? You've entered as a new character into a new chapter in the community story. The one catch is you don't really know the rest of the story, what's led up.
Mhm.
So those, Craig, I believe you use the word tradition. What are the traditions and what are the assumptions that come along with it? In rural Pennsylvania, I think, first of all, with my story, I think a little bit of, how do I want to say it? Maybe I didn't really think through it, and that was okay. I wasn't really present. Perhaps I wasn't really mindful about it, but it had meant so much to me, this practice, that I wanted to share it. And I do know at one point, my superintendent, who was really, really supportive of this, was a little bit nervous about it. I mean, you've got, a bald Asian guy who's going to sit in the middle of a assembly, crisscross applesauce, and leading what essentially looks like a meditation, right? And we're in a section of the state where there are really, where families have that a religious tradition, a lot of different religious traditions that may question, this practice. And I don't think I knew what I was getting into, but I think I was really blessed and grateful that people decided to kind of see where this went. I believe, while I say mindfulness is an invitation, the other thing that I'm fiercely, I hold on to very fiercely is that this needs to be fiercely secular. This is about our physiology. This is about how we make sense with our mind of real things that we experience empirically. So I think sometimes with certain communities, I try to connect with more acceptable versions of this practice. The breath before you take a foul shot. If I was in a military community, and I think mindfulness and practices with kind of centering yourself in stressful situations has become a very common practice. So those, I think, with a military background may appreciate it, even if they don't fully buy into it. They recognize that there's something there that people are investing in. $1 million contracts to ball players. In everything they do, their contracts riding on it. They've got to be able to be sure of themselves and know their presence in the world and in the game to be able to operate at that high level. So, I think a lot of people, a lot of Kobe Bryant's mantra is very mindfulness related. So I think when you make connections there, that helps. It seems very cursory, but it's a little bridge into this invitation, and all of a sudden it starts making sense. You know what, Craig? I'll say this: I don't know if things were going viral until the pandemic, and during the pandemic, like many school districts, communication really stopped, and the main communication came from the top, right? It's an emergency. We don't know what's going on with this virus. Let's not chatter the airwaves in the community, and let's just have one single voice. So the morning announcements actually stopped briefly. Interestingly, within a week, the community did, unbeknownst to me, request, can Steven continue the mindful minute? The children are yearning for it. And since it's on YouTube, the families had reported that kids were going back to old versions of the morning announcements and just watching it. And then, that was the community that I didn't know much about, the story I had just entered in, but I felt there was some acceptance there. So that continued even during the pandemic. So,
Nice.
yeah.
I think that's a huge testament, because you never told me that piece before.
No, I didn't. Yeah. The PTO really took it upon themselves to reach out. Yes. Again, it meant a lot, it meant that something it meant a lot in the sense that, you know how it is when you send an invitation and people reciprocate, it feels good, and that's the same thing. It was an invitation, and I'm realizing people actually wanted to be in fellowship here. Right. So.
Yeah. And I think that a couple of the things that really resonated with me that you talk about is, and this is good for me, because when I think about mindfulness, to me, I go right to my brain and what are my thoughts. And I don't always focus on the breathing part. And as you're talking, I'm being reminded about, it's literally taking in oxygen into our bodies through our cells, and taking it back to SEL, thinking about pauses between how I'm feeling and thinking about something and what my response is, my actions, my behaviors, what was my response going to be? And so oftentimes when people are upset or angry, they say, take 10 breaths before you do anything, right? And so all these things are coming together in a different way for me right now, that this is a process and it can become a routine and a habit.
You're so right. So my experience in mindfulness as Instill Mindfulness is the organization I worked with up in Floyd. They anchored a lot of the practices in your breath. Of course, there are so many different other ways to practice mindfulness. There's mindful walking, there's mindful eating, right? So many other acts that can be done in a mindful way. But so speaking of going back to Craig's word tradition, my tradition that resonated with me was just the simplicity of one breath and how amazing it is. Fleeting moments are fleeting moments. You never have those moments back. I sound so philosophical saying it, and yet it's so true, right? Like the moment we just had, we won't have back, and everything that came with it, every sensation that comes with it, you won't have that back unless you actually sit and you're present and you experience it for that moment. Yeah.
And one of the things that two things that I'm being reminded of is that even the idea of breathing, and people who know me well know that I have anxiety, and it's actually social anxiety, which is really interesting considering the work that we do.
Yeah.
But there's some nuances to that. But the breathing piece helped calm down like the tightness in my chest or the intense beating of my heart during those moments.
Mm.
And so being able to help children who are experiencing anxiety during a global pandemic or nervousness for going to a new school or starting a new sport, or, I'm thinking about my one son, and helping him think about the breathing and the kind of calming, soothing techniques that he can use for when he's feeling like a heightened sense. And then you've also mentioned sensations. And so there's two other things that I'd like to point out, and I know Craig has questions too. That when you do the videos, because I had a chance to do one with you at last year's CD conference, and you really tapped into the senses. What are you hearing? What might you be smelling? What, if your eyes are open, what might you be looking at or seeing? So if you could speak a little to that. And then I also want to not forget about the fact that these are recorded, and some of the coolest things for me is that you invite your own personal biological kiddos to participate. And I say that because I used to call my students my kids.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
I think that that's an amazing connection where your young people at school get to see your young people at home, and that this truly is a part of who you are.
Well, it's the whole idea that if children believe that you believe in it, or that you practice it in your private life with your children, um, then it doesn't seem as stale and artificial, right? So I think that's certainly helped. Kids who are at the elementary level, seeing elementary level kids who happen to be my own children participating, is wonderful. And it goes back to the idea of invitation. This is an invitation, and I want you to participate because it's it's a great way to start the day. It's a great way to be present. It's interesting, Krista. I do want to add too, this whole, so many people talk about mindfulness as this place where you could bring some calm, right? And I appreciate the social anxiety because I have like an irrational fear of speaking in front of grownups. I don't know, Craig, by the way, if I could ever be a keynote speaker anywhere. I mean, even just back to school night, I went into tunnel vision. I don't even know how big that crowd was. Like I made it through. I felt like I did a good job according to other people, but I barely even remember that presentation. Now mindfulness has helped. One of the things though about calming in mindfulness, I've learned, and for instance, sometimes if you practice mindfulness, you come out of it extremely aware and present about things. Like it's probably, to do it in the most illuminating way it's probably not ideal to do it before bedtime, right? Because you may actually come out and just be hyper aware of every sensation that you've got in you, everything that strikes your eye, everything you smell. Which is somewhat paradoxical, like to be so aware, how does it calm you down? But I think oftentimes when you think about children or ourselves in the hustle and bustle of the morning routine and trying to get in the car to get to school on time, so often we're not present, and we get in and we're in such a frazzle, our heart's beating, and you can say, I need to calm down, or I can say, you know what, I need to hit the pause button and just appreciate this moment. And as I find myself becoming more and more aware of my surrounding, I think physiologically speaking, a side effect is a calming presence, and more I see mindfulness as the calming effect as honestly a side effect. The hyper presence is the ultimate goal. Ultimately, I use a couple examples. Like if you've ever been on vacation, or like Craig, you're up in Boston, correct? So if I went to Boston and like everything is new, right? Every off ramp, what Boston I've found is just an extremely walkable town, where many parts of it are very walkable. And every time I'm in Boston, it's new, right? Now, over time, Craig, as you walk around, certainly, wherever you're most frequent in Boston, eventually you become less aware, I feel like, because it becomes the normal, right? And I've tried to practice this, like driving around here in my hometown. What if I experienced this hometown as if I was on vacation and I was a tourist? All of a sudden, we've got a lot of the Amish buggies, which I remember when I first came here were so different and so exciting. And now it's just like, oh, when do I pass this buggy without crashing, right? And to experience my normal setting with wonderment as if I was on vacation, I feel like is a very mindful experience. Going on vacation, I feel like it's very mindful. Oftentimes you suspend judgment. You're in suspense. You want to experience it all. You want to take it all in. Another great example, I don't know if you guys have this problem. When I love listening to music in the car, and my favorite jam hits, and I'm singing, I get started, and then my mind trails off, and then like often, and I don't know if you're like this too, my favorite song, part of the songs might be like the last chorus where everything hits, right? I'll be trailing off. Like I have had to restart my favorite song like 5 or 6 times to like next time try this, like truly as you're driving, experience your favorite jam without losing sight of every note, every beat, every feeling that comes with it. I that's my experience. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but I think when you can actually get through your favorite song and experience it while driving, I think that's a moment of mindfulness. So sometimes there's joy that comes out of it.
I'm loving all those emotions, and I'm thinking, like, when was the last time I truly listened to my favorite songs all the way through?
Yeah.
And I haven't. So challenge accepted. I'm going to be wrapping back around. What do you think?
that. So sorry, I just went off on that, but I was trying to presence and awareness is the goal, and I find that the more I try to get to it, I realize how not present I am, or how not aware I am.
It's all good. We're all works in progress in this work and in this walk. I am curious. You have, a very deep, toolkit of not just leadership, not just your incredible humanity. You're creating videos that families are wrapping their arms around to stay connected, right? In addition to all the great work that that leaves, I guess, that is left unsung because folks don't even know what you're doing. Like right now, it's late in the evening hour. You're still at school. But I'm curious for our wonderful listeners, if there was one thing, and I know you have many gifts, there's one thing that you could consider your superpower, what would it be?
That was the question. I knew it was coming. But
you know what? This may sound profound to our listeners who may not be in education, but I feel like every educator can relate to this power. It is the ability to see the power and the superpower in other people. I think that, I once applied to work at a friend's school, with the Quaker tradition, and one of the pieces, as I was studying, I don't have a tradition in the Friends tradition, but this idea in a lot of Friends schools that every child has a inner light has always I never ended up working there, but in my research of the tradition of Friends schools, that's stuck with me. And to connect it with mindfulness, we have to be mindful of everyone's light, and we have to be mindful of how we have a light, and B, how much we allow it to shine and help other lights grow. So, even in daily vernacular, I have fallen into and use the word inner light. It seems to resonate with educators. I think educators really get that. It may not seem like, I think every educator has that superpower, honestly. So it may not be a profound answer, Craig, for or those in the education field, or even anyone in the service field. But maybe it's enlightening to those who aren't sure about our educators in our world. We really do want to honor and see everybody's inner light. And collectively, we make quite a big bonfire. It's pretty cool too. I see the school as in a good way, a bonfire. So, yeah. So being present, I think, does recognize seeing the light and inviting that light to join together. I'll tell you what. Let me talk about some struggles here. So I'm at a new school. I've grown a little wise about the political area that we are in. I want to honor the idea that we have so many other opinions, but I think we're also in a world too where sometimes the slightest action may be taken as if there was some agenda to it. So I have actually not done video mindfulness in my new school. That's not to say I don't, what I'm trying to do now is to develop a culture where we are, going back to that inner light, recognizing people's light, inner light. We have a John Beck elementary promise, which is to offer love, care, and encouragement. I love that, speaking of this viral thing, that children are now beginning to find me. They're trying to find each other. I have notes. I got a fifth grade note. I got a note from first grade. And all they say is love, care, and encouragement. And what's funny is check out how the many ways first graders spell encouragement. We've got an amazing deaf and hard of hearing class. The first signs that they taught this new principle was love, care, and encouragement, right? And mantras matter, right? I think it helps reset our mind. I think a big part of mindfulness is gratitude. So with love, care, and encouragement, and if you offer it, then you are also thanking. So, sometimes you have kindergartners who come up and like, Mr. Lin, I love and care and, trying to think through all the words. And so now we've gotten to this point of, you can't remember all three of the words, just say thank you, right? Just say thank you. The other day I was at Sheets and a sixth grade student, I was working around, trying to order my food on the little kiosk. I never know what I want. And I just get this tap and I hear this whisper, thank you. I'm like, where did that come from? Turn around, as one of our sixth grade students. I'm not any more special than the next, but it wasn't the act so much as who it was. And that a sixth grader who could just easily have walked by his principal and, I would not have seen him, would not just acknowledge and say hello, but also thank you. And yeah, I thank him back, so that's where mindfulness is manifesting itself now. In private conversations, we've talked, Krista, you talked about the power of pausing. We talked about pausing, right? With some fourth grade students recently, we joked about how often I talk about pausing and taking a breath, that we need a t-shirt that says brain, break, breathe, right? Your brain is your brake, because we use the analogy, if you're going down down a hill on a bike and you need to slow down, hit the brakes, right? Your brain's your brake, and then breathe. So I think mindfulness, without people necessarily using that word, which is used so often in schools now, without using presence, without using some esoteric concept, just bring it back to the kids. I think there are ways, just our embodiment just teaches it. So I'm excited about this journey, but it's definitely going to be very different than the previous journey, So I just went off on a tangent again. Sorry, Craig.
This is all incredible. And I love that you told that story about the student who, you're right, could have walked away and not said anything, but it was meaningful. There was an impact. And I'm working with a larger district in my area in both high schools. And one of the high schools is really focused on mindfulness and meditation, or that pause. Mm-hmm. And it's a very large school with like 200 teachers, this one high school, and not all the teachers are comfortable. Like, I practice mindfulness, but I'm not at a point where I could facilitate that for somebody else. So there are people, though, who volunteer every class period and get on the announcements, and teachers facilitate a 2-minute pause for the whole school at the beginning of every class, and they'll put on music or birds or waves. Mm-hmm. And all they ask, it's an invitation, like you said. And I was so blown away, because I've not come across any other high schools doing that, but how you've been able to own that so that people can learn and grow. The adults can learn and grow in the practice too.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And that's something that they've done even at a high school level, where when I'm there facilitating all day, like I was a couple days ago, we paused every class period. As soon as we heard it, we as adults paused.
You honor it. Yeah. Honor the space. It's interesting because sometimes you see maybe a more cynical view of meditation out or in mindfulness out there in the school context, right? You know, the memes out there about everything a teacher needs to do, and then on top of that, a principal says, "Well, you need to meditate," right? It speaks to the concept of toxic positivity, right? So how do you share something that's so real and meaningful to many people, or can potentially be, without coming off as toxically positive, right? And I think it boils to, I think how we approach that really depends on the story of your community. But I think one of the central tenets to think about is every time we think somebody needs mindfulness, right? You're in kindergarten, bless their hearts, every kindergarten teacher out there. Kindergarten teachers at Fort Zeller, if you're listening, like, I am so sorry. Many times you've had to bail me out, even when I've tried to help out and sub and help, you can say that all of the wild squirrels that we call children in the classroom, they all need mindfulness. What I'm really telling myself is I need a moment. I have seen that done so well with some of our teachers, especially at the school where I learned about mindfulness. 6th and 7th grade teachers who would just pause and say, I need the moment for myself. All of a sudden, it's not a you need the mindfulness and this toxic positivity. It's the I need it. And by the way, when I come out of it, I may be in a place where you will reflect me. That's the way the 7th graders and the 6th graders at that school, I think, really bought into it. And I do think that's how many of the teachers I work with have bought into it. I really try to be present and check myself and not say, you know what, you ought to do mindfulness. I talk about my story and I invite people to partake in it. And I'm really grateful that many people have tried and joined in and continue. Some of the awkward laughters from that first faculty meeting are now some of the most ardent believers right now. And I don't know if I did anything other than try to be a reflection of them and allow them to be a reflection of my awareness. So.
Thank you. So as we come to a close, for those who were really excited and motivated and inspired to connect with you, how can they actually connect with you?
Good question. Reach out to me. I love answering emails. Not recently. I think during the pandemic, I spoke about mindfulness to a college class, and I just left my email out there. And I don't know, how do you guys post emails on the? Yeah. So I'll put my email out there. And just the conversations, even through email, have been really helpful. People sharing their stories has really helped me too. And social media presence, I see Krista's got her Resonance Ed Twitter handle. Steven Lin 83. That's my Twitter handle. I love connecting. Stories matter. I know I'm speaking to the choir here with you, Craig and Krista. The stories that people embody are just amazing, and they help all of us grow. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I will, before I know, and Craig has a special wrap up, which I think is really going to resonate with what you've shared, Steven, because as you're talking, my eyes are welling up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that you're speaking to our beliefs as well with something that you shared. But I do want to remind people that the PASCD conference is coming up. Registration is open. We get to see the amazing Craig Martin keynote. And that will be November 20th through the 22nd in Hershey, PA. And we will post the link where if you want to go register, you may do so. We are hoping for a very special guest appearance from Mr. Steven Lin on Sunday, November 20th.
Wow, no pressure.
No pressure. We'll be around for lunch, for dinner, for the pre-conferences. And so we'd love to see people in person and get to meet everybody. And as Craig said, break some bread. So Craig, I'm going to hand it back over to you and say to Steven, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me on. And I love that you guys are amplifying so many awesome voices. So kudos to you guys in this project here.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your work.
Yes, it has definitely been our pleasure to be in time and space, Steven, with you. It is an incredible honor. And I know I and Krista and our listeners will take away some incredible gems. We are really, really excited that so many more of our family, our SEL and EDU family, will have a chance to spend some time learning from you. So with that, SEL and EDU family, we are sending y'all nothing but incredible love. And we want to make sure that you all hold dear in care and community.
Love, care, and encouragement, right?
Yes. And ultimately, we want to make sure that as you continue to do this great and mighty work, we stand connected with light and love. But we also want you to stand in the light. Y'all have a good one.